Dear students, good morning. Here is your Manish sir. Already we have learned 4 poems through online classes, and today, just for a change, I am planning to handle grammar, that is active and passive voice. In your lower classes, you have already learned the basic lessons of active and passive voice. As you know, every tense or every verb has two voice. One is active and one is passive. In everyday communication, every one of us use active as well as passive sentences knowingly or unknowingly. What is the difference between active voice and passive voice? Understand that when you say a sentence in active voice or passive voice, the meaning do not change. The meaning remains same. Then why do we use active voice and why do we use passive voice? Just we can say that depends upon the situation. If you want to give more importance to the doer of the action, that is the subject, we usually use active voice. So most of the sentences which we use in day-to-day communication are in active voice. Dear students, in English grammar, voice does not mean the sound we make while we talk. It indicates whether the subject of a sentence is doing the action or having the action done to it. Voice is the term used to describe whether a verb is active or passive. It describes the relationship between the action that the verb expresses and the participants identified by its arguments. It tells us whether the subject of the verb is acted upon or is acting. Verbs are either active or passive in voice. Based on that, there are two types of voices in English. They are active and passive. The verb in an active sentence is said to be in the active voice. This means if in a sentence the subject is performing the action, the verb is said to be in the active voice. In other words, in active voice, the subject performs the action expressed by the verb. For example, let's take the sentence, the boy ate the apple. In this sentence, the boy is the subject and ate is the active verb. In other words, the subject, the boy, did the verb ate. The verb in a passive sentence is said to be in the passive voice. Passive voice is used when the action is the focus, not the subject. It is not important or unknown. The subject is not important or not known. Who does the action? In other words, in passive voice, the subject receives the action expressed by the verb. In the active voice, the subject and the verb relationship is straightforward, while in the passive voice, it is indirect. If you take the sentence, the window is broken, we do not know who broke the window, or it is not important to know who broke the window. Two basic rules should be followed for converting sentences from active voice to passive voice. The subject and the object should interchange their places in the sentence, and the past participle form of the verb, means V3 form of the verb, should be used as the main verb. However, the rules for using the auxiliary verb in a sentence are different for each tense. Here are 4 examples of active voice and passive voice of different tenses. Let's see the first one. Mohan builds a house. It is in simple present tense. A house is built by Mohan. Second one. The doctor is advising the patient. It's in present continuous. The patient is being advised by doctor. Third one. I have finished my work. It's in present perfect. My work has been finished by me. Fourth one, I inspected the shop. Simple past it is. The shop was inspected by me. The idea of active and passive voice can be cleared with an example. Let me tell you a sentence. Akash writes stories. Here, as you know, Akash is the subject or doer of the action. Writes is the verb. Stories is the object. This sentence is in simple present tense and it is in active voice because Akash, the subject or the doer of the action, is active here, and the action which is writing, it is done on the object, that is stories. So this sentence we can see it is in active voice. The verb is, as I told you, simple present tense, subject plus V1 plus object. Here the action is directly done by the subject and the subject gets more importance. The same sentence we can use or we can express in passive voice also. How can we write it? See the example. Stories are written by Akash. Just observe the changes what happened here. The object of the first sentence, that is stories, has become the subject of the passive sentence. Stories are written by Akash, and Akash, who is the doer of the action, has become passive at the end of the sentence. And observe the change that happened in the verb. Writes has changed to are written. So the formula of the passive voice of simple present tense is subject plus is or are plus V3 or verb, third form of the verb. Remember always, in passive form, every passive form we use the third form of the verb. If you just observe, we can see what changes has happened in both the sentence. Akash, which is the subject of the first sentence, has become object of the second sentence. Stories, which is the object of the first sentence, has become the subject of the passive sentence. And writes turned as a are written in the passive voice. So here if you read the second sentence, stories are written by Akash. Here the subject stories get more importance, and who wrote it is comparatively less importance. But in first subject, Akash writes stories. Here Akash gets more importance, and who writes stories? Akash. But in second sentences, stories are written by Akash. What is written by Akash? That gets more importance. So this is the difference between active and passive voice. Dear students, now let us move to the progressive tense, that is present continuous tense. As you know, present continuous tense, subject plus is or am or are plus ing form of the verb plus object is the formula of the active tense. Akash, for example, Akash is writing a story. Akash is the subject, is writing is the verb, a story is the object. So this is in present continuous tense, an action that is going on at the time of speaking. The same sentence we can convert to passive voice. Let us see what changes happens. As I told, we are exchanging the subject and object. So a story becomes the subject, Akash goes to the part of object. So a story, then verb let us leave there now, by Akash. So is writing, what is the change happened? Is writing. So is writing changes to is being written, B-E-I-N-G. That shows the continuity of the action. Akash is writing a story changes, a story is being written by Akash. So all the progressive tenses, present continuous or past continuous, we should use being plus V3. Here you can see the story becomes more important in the second sentence, and Akash, who is the doer of the action, remains same but becomes less important. So in first sentence, Akash gets more prominence, as he writes a story, he is writing a story. But the second sentence, though Akash is writing the story, what he is doing, that is getting more importance. And dear students, now let's move to the perfect tense, that is present perfect tense. The same sentence will change to present perfect tense. Akash has written a story. Akash is singular, so we have used has. In present perfect tense, always we use third form of the verb. So Akash has written a story. So here Akash is a subject, has written is the verb, a story is the object. So how can we convert to passive voice? Same technique, exchange the subject and object. So a story becomes subject, Akash becomes the object. The major thing is that what is the change that happens in the verb. So has written changes to, as you know, has been written. Remember, in present perfect tense, active voice we use V3 form. So in passive voice also, written will repeat, no change. Akash has written a story changes to a story has been written by Akash. You can see there is no change in the meaning of the sentences, but in first sentence the doer of the action Akash gets more prominence, but in second sentence a story, what is done by Akash, a story gets more prominence. That is a change in that happened in present perfect tense. Now let's analyze how to change the interrogative sentences of simple present tense, present continuous and present perfect tense to its passive voice. Let's take the same example. Akash writes stories. So when you change to, it is an affirmative sentence. When we change to interrogative, it changes, does Akash write stories? Does Akash write stories? This is simple present tense interrogative sentence. Let us see what changes, how can we change the same sentence into passive voice. Here stories become the subject in the passive voice. So what happens, stories as it is plural, we use the question word are. Are stories written by Akash? If it was story, we have to use is a story written by Akash. Next, let us go to present continuous interrogative sentence. Akash is writing a story. We can make it interrogative, bringing the helping verb into the first. Is Akash writing a story? Is Akash writing a story is an interrogative sentence in present continuous tense. How can we make it to passive voice? Let's use the same question word is, then we have to take the object of the first sentence, a story. Is a story being written by Akash? Same, being written by Akash. Next, let us see the present perfect tense. Akash has written a story. It's an affirmative sentence. We can make to interrogative, bringing helping verb has to the first. Has Akash written a story? Has Akash written a story? When we convert to passive voice, just bring the a story into the beginning and use the same question word. Has a story been written by Akash? Has a story been written by Akash? Now let's see how to convert a negative sentence to passive voice of simple present tense, present continuous as well as present perfect tense. Let's take the same example of Akash. In simple present tense, we can make it negative. Akash does not write stories. Same, Akash is the subject, stories is the object. Akash does not write stories. Just bring the object to the place of subject. Stories are not written by Akash. So does not write changes to are not written. Next, present continuous. Akash is not writing stories. Present continuous. Negative sentence. Akash is not writing stories. Do the same thing. Stories comes first as a subject. As it is plural, we have to use a plural verb. Stories are not being written by Akash. Stories are not being written by Akash. Now let's see present perfect tense. Akash has not written stories. Akash has not written stories. Do the interchange. Stories, remember, stories becomes the subject and it is in plural. So we have to use a plural verb. Stories have not been written by Akash. Stories have not been written by Akash. All these three questions we can see the passive voice also. Sorry, all these three negative sentences we can see the sentence meaning do not change. Dear students, now I hope you understood how to convert active voice and passive voice of simple present tense, present continuous and present perfect. Remember that present perfect continuous does not have a passive form. Dear students, now let's just discuss few examples of active voice and passive voice of all the simple present, present continuous and present perfect tenses. He sings a song. It's simple present tense. A song is sung by him. He does not sing a song. A song is not sung by him. Does he sing a song? Is a song sung by him? Next, let's see present continuous tense. I am writing a letter. A letter is being written by me. I am not writing a letter. A letter is not being written by me. Am I writing a letter? Is a letter being written by me? Next, present perfect tense. She has finished her work. Her work has been finished by her. She has not finished her work. Her work has not been finished by her. Has she finished her work? Has her work been finished by her? Dear students, the video has already reached 20 minutes. There are many things to speak again about the active and passive voice of a present sentence, simple present, present continuous, present perfect. As I told you, present perfect continuous does not have passive voice. So this next class we will discuss the active and passive voice of past tense as well as future tense. What are the doubts you have about these three tenses, its active or passive form, whatever it is, please ask me and I'll be happy to clear it. Thank you. Bye.